following us up with his preparation.
I made notes. After I wrote it down, I remembered everything I wanted to say.
That's an oddity.
It's amazing.
Dan has just mimed his head explode.
3 different programs. She uses Photoshop for her textures, a program called Bryce to actually draw out the terrain, and then the symbols and the labels and whatnot are done in CorelDRAW.
I'm surprised she doesn't use any of the completely unuser-friendly Campaign Cartographer software.
Yeah. You know what I have, and that does surprise me too. Campaign Cartographer is very much like Photoshop in that there's so much crap in it that you almost need to take a class.
It makes Photoshop look user-friendly.
Yeah,
truthfully.
So, but for user-friendly sake, I can see why she would use 3 different things.
Well, from what I read, she said that she has tried all those programs, and yes, some of them are really easy. Some of them are more high-end, very difficult, like you're saying, Campaign Cartographer. And I think you just got to settle in with what you're most comfortable with.
And learn the tools, yeah.
One thing I've noticed about her maps, Mike, is she gets down to the minutest detail as far as every village, every river crossing.
She does her research.
And what sources does she use?
All of them.
Every official source, correct?
And semi-official.
Oh, she uses
Greyhawks.
Oh, she uses Cannon Fire stuff too.
I'm not too certain about
that. But I mean, I could. But here's when I have an opportunity to get on the internet during my free time,
not at work.
But here's the
I'll go over her maps, and it's just everything. It's just I love just going over that stuff and looking at it.
She tries to get a balance, like I was saying. She tries to get a balance of her maps being a work of art and utility. You can download her maps as JPEG files or as a PDF file, and in the PDF file they have layers that you can disable,
right?
So that gets rid of the heraldry and the words or maybe even the borders of countries. I mean, that's a lot of work. So that's why I would say she's on the top.
She's definitely at the top of the list. But I remember a few years ago there was a guy, and I think he was at Cannon Fire.
He's also part of the...
is he part of the group?
The group, that's... You think of Eric Annenson.
Eric Annenson. Just incredibly beautiful maps. And it was more a work of art, I think, really, than utilitarian necessarily. Right, Mike?
Yeah, he was pretty much along the same lines. Mostly Photoshop, I think he said he did. I actually asked a question before we were doing the podcast on the Facebook group, what programs people use most, and Photoshop is the most commonly used program.
His maps to me almost looked like satellite photos. I mean, they were
like topographical and everything.
Yeah, and it just incredibly detailed. And I mean, I don't think he really got necessarily into all the villages and things that Anna does. I know he did the Thalonrian Peninsula, which is one of my favorite places in Greyhawk. And I mean, I know I printed that out half a dozen times in full color. And
well, I got a couple scoops anyhow pertaining to those 2 mappers. Eric is working on a map right now that's going to be in the area we're playing right now, the Sea Princes.
Cool.
And Anna is currently working on a map that compiles, Dan, all the maps she's done to this point.
So it'll be one file as opposed to...
Right,
40.
Huge. I think it was 100 megabyte file or something.
It'll end up being bigger than that.
Plotter.
I love that thing. Make no mistake.
But I'll let you know when that gets released.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of. Okay, we love maps. Okay, line in the sand, but it doesn't affect our games. We
can play without them. Is what you're saying?
Yeah. We don't use them in game. Other than Mike's hand-drawn area of the Sea Princes that we're, but that's the first time I can really even remember it being utilized in this fashion.
I've mentioned it before. We've got the dry erase table and things like that. But Mike has gone to using our game paper putting out an area map of what we're going to be dealing with. Mm-hmm. And then that way he can just roll that out and say, here's the burned out area where you guys are coming on shore. That kind of thing.
Here's where you guys are getting screwed. So right here is the place.
Yeah, and things like that, like game paper is good. Initially we thought, remember when it first came out and we were thinking, this will be great. We can, we could use it and erase it and all this other stuff. No, it's not good for that.
It's for disposable.
It's good for disposable, like one-time use. Use a Sharpie on it to make your actual lines and then throw it away.
It's the same quality paper as what you get with wrapping paper.
Actually,
and you can actually buy wrapping paper that has squares on the back.
Talk about one of those those genius ideas that was already out there.
Right, it was always there.
They rebranded it.
Right.
And I'm sure that's what happened. I mean, I hate to take credit away from those guys because it's brilliant. It's a brilliant idea for gamers. If you don't have gaming paper, go buy some.
I prefer the hex.
Yeah, it comes in.
Yeah, that's right.
That's because, now, I mean, I don't know if this is a map discussion appropriate or not. Hex versus square, and I'll take hex every day of the week.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
In general.
Oh, yeah.
I personally haven't worked with hex that much, but I see where it would be advantageous.
Movement is so much easier on hex than squares.
It's weird because we're so used to grid form, but a lot of the older games, I'm talking like BattleTech.
Yes, that's the main one that comes to mind.
I had an AD&D book that was all laid out in hexes.
Yeah.
A lot of your science fiction games.
So there's a new Gamers Table T-shirt. I just want a square with the Ghostbusters X out through it. No square maps.
All those old wargaming board games, Europa or whatever, things like that, they were all hex-based.
Chess is square, Mike. Checkers, square.
Especially with a game that you're doing facing. It's like modern, 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. You have facings. You can
walking diagonally. I mean, come on.
It makes it.
What's the method for movement when you're trying to go? You can't. You're not allowed to move diagonally.
2-1, 2-1.
It's 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. That's stupid.
That's dumb.
That's ridiculous.
That's not in 4th edition anymore.
It's not.
They took that out.
And aces and eights. It's hex.
Yeah. So.
All right. So we got that out of the way. That's just
Well, in most gaming maps, your overland maps are hexes. Then your dungeons and tactical maps are all done in squares.
Lame.
I agree. Okay, so you guys love your
Fix
Greyhawk
that.
maps, and that's fine. Second to...
I love the Realms maps, too. I mean,
you're D&D. My favorite, I like alternate history books.
Me too, Dan.
That's why I love the Shadowrun map.
Yeah.
Not to beat another one of our dead horses.
CAS,
but
UCAS.
the breakup of, and even Europe.
I don't think I've seen a lot of... I mean, I do remember looking at the European map, but not as much as North America.
Right.
And really, the only thing interesting about those maps are the border lines.
Yeah, the fiction behind how they chose to do what they did.
One map that in particular that I really enjoy is back when Wizards of the Coast first got the Star Wars license, and they had a magazine called Star Wars Gamer.
Oh, yeah.
They had a map of the galaxy in there that is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I still own it. Because of that, it shows all of the different sectors and all the planets so you can see what color each planet is and everything.
Even though Georgie has totally screwed that map up and made it completely useless as far as official Lucas.
I don't know.
You don't think?
Probably, but it's
that's one of the problems when you have a community who are creating content for something they don't own, and I kind of want to think that though her maps are really nice, like Anna and even the work Mike does and the people on Canifire, they're creating content for what is considered now a dead world that could all be nullified by the people who own the intellectual property.
Well, that's always the risk you run.
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. This is what happens when you create content for things that is not yours.
And I don't think that community would be heartbroken if Wizards decided to pick it back up and start doing it again.
Think of it this way.
That'd bother them at all.
If you're running a Greyhawk game, but it's not a pre-written storyline, it's something you came up for Greyhawk yourself. Right. You are using their intellectual property to create your game. So nobody else outside of your game group or anyone else you play with that is going to care that you created a whole city 4 miles outside of Greyhawk City that's got towers twice as tall.
But they sure do like telling you about it.
And
coming from a guy who ran a game shop.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Nobody cares about your homebrew.
Yeah. No, microbrew.
That's a little different than if you're just it's just your game group, but people who are taking it very seriously.
Yes, that's a whole other.
As gamers or nerds in general tend to do, we tend to take these things very seriously.
We do.
Right. That's why there are no such things as midichlorians or Gungans.
What's are you talking about, Mark?
Slap him in the face. Jason, I'd like you to know that you're the reason we can't play Star Wars.
Why?
Yes. Because you're Gunganness.
I wouldn't play a Gungan.
You would still talk like one. You're not
No, I
playing
wouldn't.
Gungan. Yes, we're not even talking about Star Wars, and you busted out Gungan.
He just was talking about Star Wars.
I don't know what you're
He
talking
could play a Mon Calamari.
It's a trap.
That was Sean. It wasn't me.
There's a topic for the show sometime. Jason's autonomic triggers.
Don't have any. I don't know what you're talking about.
about. Help us all.
There's another website for anyone interested in seeing what other map makers do. It's www.cartographersguild.com. That's where there's professional and amateur mappers on there.
I'm actually very interested in mapping. Not that I do any of it because of my microbrew campaign. Because I want to have a nice map. I used Campaign Cartographer, came up with some maps for it. It's just that program is so frustrating.
I have tried many.
Yeah.
Ed
Gave me his old Campaign Cartographer when he got the new one, and I looked at that for 12 hours, and I couldn't do anything with it.
Ed bought that years ago. He
Right.
bought it whatever it was before it was Campaign Cartographer. That's what he bought.
AutoCAD.
No, there was something before it was branded as Campaign Cartographer.
Well, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, no, it is. It's an AutoCAD overlay, and I tried
Yuck.
and I tried much like Photoshop because over the years I've taught
See-
myself Photoshop, but
That's why I think that we should just do what we tried to do 20 years ago or whenever it was, when we each took a piece of paper and...
We don't have time for all that, though.
Well, I think we
As
do.
a group?
I think we do. We could do that. Like on Mondays.
we can't post on our own message boards. We can't take the time to do that.
And I hereby
I
vow...
just joined our message board this afternoon.
I hereby vow that I'm going to
There's just no
do as
time
my
for
friend
these
Eric
things.
asked.
Being a cartographer and doing these things, especially when it's a labor of love, is hyper time intensive.
Yes.
Right. And that's what I was going to ask is, with Eric and Anna, do they find time to game at all?
I believe, I don't know about Eric, I'll have to ask, but Anna does have a regular campaign that her maps are devoted to.
Is she the game master?
Is she
I don't know
unemployed?
that.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
Independently wealthy.
Hey, having somebody who's good at maps is never a bad thing to be friends with.
I totally agree.
It's a good thing to have friends like that. So
Jason, you are a cartographer, but you're not
I am?
remembering, you're talking about doing world maps. You're actually a floor plan specialist.
Well, I guess, yeah.
back in the day, I remember many a times every campaign we had, you always had the floor
tavern.
plans for everything that we were doing.
I guess that is something I really enjoy doing, and I've liked doing that since I was a little kid. But the floor plans were always, and that's funny that you say that. Anytime we do a dungeon crawl, Mike, you do all the mapping, because I think we tried to do it back in the day.
Yeah, well, the old way was you go 20 feet.
The players, right? The players would have to draw their own map,
Right.
and that got to be such a pain in the butt.
Well, it's so tedious.
And we were constantly no, Mike, no. I said right, not left. Having to erase on the map, and Mike just draws the map for us now. And I think that's probably something else we should probably try and get away from.
That's how we the game's probably evolved to have these big 1x1 squares and minis.
Because of people like Jason.
What? No, I think when we just did our actual play for Victoriana, we didn't. I know I mentioned this
it
before.
was not needed.
Well, I don't know. The one building we were in, we probably could have used a floor plan.
But I mean,
but Eric did a good job describing the setting, and
the
didn't need to
mechanics
do that.
of that game though don't lend itself to needing a grid.
And there wasn't a real big need for the map. I mean, we could have plotted.
See, that's
out
why I
everything.
think maps and RPG, that's two completely different things. People enjoy creating content for the things that they love, i.e. Mike. And he would probably continue to do the things that he does, even if we never played Greyhawk D&D ever again.
Correct.
So I think these things are completely separate. Like Jason will draw the floor plan of a ship that we'll never use in a Star Wars game.
I've played for hours upon hours with the shipbuilding the shipbuilding rules for Star Trek and Star Wars.
Yep.
And it's stuff that I'm never going to be able to use for any reason.
So yeah, people like to dig into the things that they're into.
That's why one of my favorite things for Star Wars, like when I'm drawing a Star Wars ship, like Dan says that we're never going to use, is the books, the cutaway books that they make. We
I
have
don't
quite.
I don't think I know what you're talking
They
about.
have like schematic books. Yeah,
I love me some schematics.
It'll show the
schematics,
Falcon,
too.
but it'll be like a painting of the Falcon,
Right.
and it'll have like parts of it.
Like an artist's
the whole plating removed,
I
so you
love
can
that.
see
God, I love
the
that
inner
stuff.
workings and guts of the ship.
Yeah, Star Wars is real good about that.
like a
'cause they have
technical drawing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I used one of those for the, I think it was a Corellian Corvette that our group had, and I used that, the cutaway of a Corellian Corvette, to draw our ship map.
Right.
I mean, I had to kind of play with it a little bit. It wasn't entirely accurate, but
right.
And of course, before we were done, or by the time we were done playing, I wasn't even close to having half of it done. But I enjoyed it.
Unfinished project. That's a topic.
We used to do that all the time.
Did you start things we didn't finish? Oh.
But I think, going back to my original point is that maps, I think, are a very underrated piece of RPG